Hey everybody, this video was postponed a number of times due to illness where Creative John, the one that, draws, makes videos, and is productive, took a backseat to the I wish I was dead John, who basically just lies in agony and does nothing. So yeah, I hope you're all having a better week than me, and thanks for coming to listen to me gush about my favorite video game franchise ever, The Legend of Zelda. Or maybe you're just here to watch me paint Link. Either way, welcome. I just want to let you all know that I won't be talking about my artistic process in this video, though I hope that the art serves as a nice backdrop to what I want to talk about today, which is, of course, The Legend of Zelda. This video will be divided into 3 sections. Section 1, Why I Love Zelda. Section 2 will be my Tears of the Kingdom wish list, and Section 3 will be my Legend of Zelda rankings. I'll be ranking the Legend of Zelda titles. That's a lot of different topics that could be their own videos, but seeing as this is an art/writing channel primarily, I probably won't ever be making another Zelda video on this channel, and so I decided to condense all of these topics that I wanted to cover into this one single video that is Zelda themed. Why I love Zelda. As I was organizing my thoughts for this video, I asked myself why I am so in love with the Zelda franchise. Don't get me wrong, there are objectively better games out there from a design, gameplay, and or narrative standpoint. There are a select few games that beat Zelda on every front, and there are loads of games that beat it in at least one of these categories. And while you could chalk it up to nostalgia, I'd argue there's something else there that keeps me coming back and keeps me as enthused about every new installment as when I was a kid, even into my late 20s. And that thing, if I could encapsulate it into one word, is adventure. And this makes sense considering that adventure was literally where Zelda was first conceptualized by Mr. Shigeru Miyamoto, who loved exploring the outdoors so much he wanted to capture that sense of exploration in a video game. By and large, that's what adventure is. It's exploration. But when we think of exploration, we typically think of exploring nature, ruins, cities, different environments. But I think a proper adventure broadens its meaning to include people as well. Not every story is an adventure, but some of the best ones are, and it's one of the most powerful storytelling formulas when done correctly. An adventure is perfectly suited to the interactive medium of video games, as it makes it all the more immersive for the player to do the exploring rather than watching it be done. But this hasn't stopped the very popular series of One Piece from taking off into international success and being considered a classic. TV shows that capture this sense of adventure, as deep and immersive as I think The Legend of Zelda does, always have a huge following of devoted fans behind them. In fact, I think One Piece's sense of adventure is what has held it as the most popular manga of all time, well after its contemporaries of Naruto, Bleach, and Dragon Ball have all dropped in popularity. And that's because, unlike narrative-driven stories that necessarily have a definitive ending, adventure stories don't have to end, ever, if they don't want to. For them to be like this, adventure stories have to open up by introducing a world of seemingly limitless possibilities. Adventure stories achieve this in various ways, either by directly showing us the scope of their world, or doing something else to let the audience know that there is a lot to explore, but it always happens at the beginning of the story. Since adventure stories rely heavily on their worlds for intrigue and interest, they are always fantastical. Even sci-fi adventures where you travel from one planet to another are really just reskinned fantasy worlds. Breaking down the adventure formula into different elements, I came up with this list of things that are almost always present in adventure stories, and The Legend of Zelda is no exception. Number 1, starting off small. Adventure stories are typically a story of a small-town boy or girl doing big-time things. This juxtaposition of how an adventure starts off and its gradual upward climb shown through bigger and more fantastical environments, fighting bigger and badder baddies, and helping more and more people is key to an adventure's impact. And this can be perfectly seen in many Legend of Zelda titles, including Twilight Princess, where Link starts out doing simple mundane tasks in his hometown of Ordon Village, and you play for probably a good 15-20 minutes of the game just doing these simple mundane tasks like helping the neighborhood kids, wrangling in some goats, and other tasks like this that serve as a great juxtaposition to what the rest of the game will bring as the story unfolds. The second element is the call to adventure. This is the inciting moment where the young hero sets off on his quest. It could be that the status quo is disrupted in a big way, an example, The Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess, or it could be that the adventurer starts off their epic quest in an inconspicuous way. We almost see this happen in Twilight Princess when Link is invited by the Ordon mayor to take a shipment of goat milk to the kingdom's capital as a gift to the princess. The third element is a mode of transportation / an overworld. So an adventure story by necessity needs to have an expansive overworld. From everything I've seen, there's pretty much 4 different options when it comes to your overworld. It could either be the sea, like in One Piece. It could be a galaxy, like in Star Trek. It could be the sky, like in Skyward Sword. Or it could be just a landmass. And then you also need a mode of transportation befitting the overworld. If it's a landmass, it could be a vehicle or a horse. If it's the sky, a bird or a plane. If it's a galaxy, well, a spaceship. And if it's a sea, then a ship. And the fourth and final element to the adventure formula is gathering a crew. This is mostly always present. Typically, a crew is accrued, by the protagonist. This can be done at whatever pace. Some crews are gathered throughout the whole story, like in Twilight Princess, whereas some are gathered all towards the very beginning of the story, like in One Piece. And all members of a crew typically bring new skills to the table. With these 4 key elements in place, an adventure story can then take its audience wherever it wants, at whatever pace it wants. And I think Zelda does all of these things very well. But why all this talk about the anatomy of an adventure story? I think that adventure stories, commonly referred to as the hero's journey in the study of literature, is the strongest storytelling formula to ever exist, and is a formula for successful storytelling as old as time. Something about it resonates with a huge number of people, myself included, and I believe that its appeal can be largely attributed to one thing, and that one thing is escapism. The majority of everyone watching this video, according to my audience analytics through YouTube at least, is in their 20s or 30s, the prime of your life. It's supposed to be the time where the healthiest, most physically fit, most intelligent version of yourself can come forward. The vast majority of things that held you back as a child, like parents, money, or not having a driver's license, don't anymore. And the majority of things that will hold you back in your later years, like crippling health problems, haven't begun to take their hold on you yet. So, what are we doing with these golden years? Well, if you're like me, you're probably just going to your day job over and over, day after day, making the necessary money to get by another month of bills and household necessities. Or maybe you're studying, in which case the same existential pressures exist, but in the form of homework, incoming exams, and tuition. The funny thing is that when you're most fit for adventure, that is when life tells you to buckle down and grind. To grind out hours at work, to not lose your health insurance coverage, to build up your vacation hours, so that maybe at some point down the line, you can afford yourself a small vacation with your family. And all the while, parked at your school or office desk, there exists a deep longing inside of you. A longing for adventure, to do new things, to go new places, to be chosen for something special, for some special purpose more fulfilling and important than making sure Susan gets her reshipment of essential oils, to be destined for greatness, to experience the wild, the fantastical, the epic. These feelings are universal, and they're what fuel the hero's journey. These are feelings that every human has experienced throughout all of history, and it has what has made the hero's journey as a storytelling formula to be as successful as it has been throughout all of time. It is the story that we all tell ourselves inside of our heads as we go about our mundane daily tasks. And thus we can all escape from our often bland, colorless realities into the place that's always existed in our minds as children. This is escapism. This is why I love the Zelda franchise and why it has come to mean so much to me. In The Legend of Zelda, you play as one character and one character only, the lovable, blonde-haired boy Link. Outside of a name, what do we actually know about him? That he wields the Triforce of Courage, sure. That he wears a green tunic, yes, okay. But I'm wondering what we know about him as a person. The answer is next to nothing. Outside of one or two personality or background traits, Link is and always has been designed to be what's called an audience surrogate, a blank character that we can project ourselves onto. Why else do you think that Link, in all the Legend of Zelda installments, has had a total of 0 lines of dialogue? He is our stand-in so that we can be the adventurer. We can be the hero. We can be the wielder of the Triforce of Courage. Zelda's meaning to me personally goes beyond what a video game would normally mean to a person. I started playing Zelda, the Ocarina of Time, when I was just 6 years old, and I can tell you that it taught me many things and shaped the way I think. It instilled a level of courage in me to face the monsters in my life without turning away. The Legend of Zelda gave me courage, and this is by design. Link, the woodland dweller, usually portrayed as scrawny, young, short of stature, with typically soft features and a less than intimidating presence, takes on beasts of pure malice many times his size, and he always does it with courage. Unwavering courage. That is the one personality trait that is given to this audience surrogate that's otherwise void of personality. He's the blank slate I previously mentioned, save this one definitive characteristic. It's the characteristic that the game wishes to instill in us, the player. My childhood was good, but flawed in many ways. I grew up in poor conditions, in a rundown country home. I was a child of divorce. Even at an early age, there were demons in my life that I had to face. I wasn't sure I could face them alone. And yet, it seemed like that was the only option for me. But what I realized was I wasn't alone. As corny as it may sound, the truth is, Link was there with me. He was my hero in dark times. He lent me his courage and showed me how to stare evil in the eye. Whereas for many other kids, their childhood superheroes were Superman, Batman, or Spider-Man, or even Goku, for me, it was Link. He was my childhood superhero, and the only superpower he wields is one that we can all wield: courage. This is why I love The Legend of Zelda. It allows me to escape this reality into another one that, with how much meaning it holds for me, feels just as real. And not only that, but it offers me something in return for taking the journey. It offers me courage. And for this reason, and many others, I'll always anxiously await new releases in the Zelda franchise till the day I die. Yeah, you can expect 60-year-old John to be sitting on his couch, unboxing the brand new, most recent installment of The Legend of Zelda, popping it into my whatever future Nintendo console we've got in that day and age, and I'll be playing Legend of Zelda. That's where you'll find me when I'm 60. And of course, like many other people, and probably like many of you watching this video, I am extremely excited for Tears of the Kingdom. Okay, now let's move on to the more lighthearted, fun half of this video, starting with my Tears of the Kingdom wish list. And obviously, you can feel free to share your wish list for this video game down in the comments below. Item number 1, weapon system revamp. I recognize this is a long shot, but I wish for a revamp to the weapon system from Breath of the Wild. I don't like destructible weaponry. Many people have asked for more durable weapons, but still destructible, whereas I would propose a system more like this. Permanent, non-destructible weapons that, instead of breaking, could dull over time and lose damage stats as they dull. And then you'd need whetstones or some other material to sharpen them. You could even have different types of whetstones for different weapons. And maybe some of them are, they could vary in rarity, so that way the best weapons need the rarest materials to sharpen. Number 2, a large settlement plus more towns. My second wishlist item would be for more towns, and at least one large settlement like a castle town. I'd like the large settlement to act as a hub for various missions, a place for loads of side quests, awesome gear, trading options, entertainment, minigames, etc. While I understand the wild aspect of Breath of the Wild, I feel like this was missing from the previous installment. Number 3, wider enemy variety plus more humanoid enemies. My third item on this list is for a wider enemy variety. More specifically, I love fighting enemies that are a little more humanoid in design than the Bokoblins, Lizalfos, and Moblins that we got in Breath of the Wild. However, as I was recording this, I saw the rating for the game was released as E10 and up, and I do recognize that this wish, in particular, is now more than likely just wishful thinking. At the very least, I hope they bring back the Dark Nuts. Number 4, unique dungeons and bosses. This one is a bit of a given and is probably the one thing that is universally wished for on every Tears of the Kingdom wishlist. But yeah, I would love to see unique dungeons and bosses, rich with lore and mechanics and puzzles that are all unique to that dungeon in particular. The divine beasts of Breath of the Wild were, as a whole, just too samey, Not enough variety in there for my tastes and seemingly for the world's tastes. And number 5, and the last item for this list, better clothing options / bring the green tunic back, baby! My last item of this top 5 list is for better clothing options. This is quite subjective and non-specific because everybody's going to have different tastes in what they like for the clothing, but I just felt like a large amount of the clothing options from Breath of the Wild were uninteresting or didn't fit into the adventure of Link. Like, for example, the luchador spandex. I don't remember the actual names for these clothings, but there was like a luchador spandex one, the barbarian clothes, etc. If I were in charge of the clothing designs, I would bring back the iconic green tunic as part of the game, not as DLC. And it could even get a sick, awesome Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom sort of a revamp, while still looking like his iconic green tunic from previous installments. And also I would feature Link's iconic pointed cap design in more clothing. Kind of like what Twilight Princess did. Twilight Princess had a few different clothing designs. It's not like they had a whole wardrobe in that game. But the clothes that they did have, a lot of them, or all of them, featured the iconic Link's cap design, but just sort of with different elements on it. Like there was the magic armor that the cap looked like a little bit metallic and with some gems and stuff on it. Oh, that was freaking sick. Okay, and lastly, I want to include my official Zelda rankings in this video. As a note, I will only be ranking the main 3D Zelda installments. None of the handheld installments or the really older games that just don't compete. They just can't compete with newer stuff. And yes, this list is subjective, so don't get offended. And please feel free to share your list in the comments below. Disclaimer, I love all main Zelda installments, okay? And so even the ones that are at the bottom of this list, I still love and have played multiple times. So yeah, don't be adding me for the game that's at the bottom of this list. So at the very bottom, the bottom ranking, I am putting Skyward Sword. And just to give a few ideas why, The cons in that game for me were the repetitive use of regions and bad boss design overall. There was like some freaking Monsters Inc. bosses in that game. And the pros are amazing final boss. In fact, Demise, the final fight with Demise, is my #1 Zelda fight of all time. And very fun side quests. After Skyward Sword, in 5th place, we've got The Wind Waker. Cons for that game, I didn't like the overworld very much. I liked the idea of the sea, but thought it was poorly executed as most of the islands were very uninteresting, and somewhat forgettable dungeons in my opinion. Pros, amazing visuals and soundtrack, and very fun side quests. I loved the pictograph and getting the little statues, the models of all the characters in the game, as just one example of the awesome side quests in that game. And in number 4, I put Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask is very fun. It's an amazing game, but it does have less dungeons overall, which I consider a con. And pros for this game, I love the time system. I love the 3-day time system, and I love the mask collection. So fun, and just being able to transform into the Goron, the Deku, and the Zora. Oh, that is a chef's kiss. Number 3. Ocarina of Time. Cons to this game is that it has aged slightly, being the oldest installment in this list, and the side quests are kind of lackluster compared to more recent installments. Pros to that game is just an amazing soundtrack that transcends time and will always be considered classic. Dungeons are great. Oh my gosh. Some of the best dungeons in the entire series, and amazing final boss. Nothing tops the emotion that is brought in that final boss fight against Ganon. In 2nd place, I put Breath of the Wild. The cons to this game are quite obvious. The dungeons and the side quests, it's kind of missed the mark on that one for me. The pros, obviously, a stark contrast. The pros of this game are the world, which is just second to none, and just the whole toolbox, sandbox type. It's amazingly fun to you can just sink hours into that game just messing around with your toolbox with all of the different Sheikah Slate items that you have to use. And that leaves 1st place to Twilight Princess. If you couldn't tell by how much I had already talked about Twilight Princess previously in this video. Cons to this, there are some cons, some negative aspects to this game, and those I would consider to be the side quests, which don't compare to those of Majora's Mask or Wind Waker or Skyward Sword. And it's just too easy of a game overall, regrettably. The pros to that game, though, are just an amazing, epic atmosphere. The dungeons, oh, baby, don't get me started on those dungeons. And boss designs, some of the best boss designs in the entire series are in this game. So, yeah, those are my favorite Zelda games in order. From bottom to top. Again, that's Skyward Sword, Wind Waker, Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time, Breath of the Wild, and Twilight Princess topping them all. I hope that Tears of the Kingdom can top this list once it does come out next May. And I believe it might, right? It very possibly could. I trust in the team, and I trust in what they're going to do with it. But please, again, feel free to share your own list down below in the comments. And of course, since I do enjoy talking about things that I love, who doesn't, I might be making more videos somewhat similar to this in the future, talking about other things that I love, just as much as Legend of Zelda. There's quite a few different things that have really impacted my life, from different games to TV shows, movies, etc., that maybe I might talk about in future videos along with a fan art. If I ever do a video on something I like, then I'll probably make a fan art of it. But if you have any tips for me about maybe how to change the format for future videos of this style, then please leave those in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for tuning into this video and hearing me talk about The Legend of Zelda in various different ways. I hope you enjoyed it, and take care. See you next time.